What's up, Call of Duty fans? Welcome back. We've got Pool D on the spotlight for the breakdown for Fort Worth before we get started on Friday. And again, all of the pools will be played on a single day, so keep that in mind that we'll have pool play on Friday and then bracket play throughout Saturday and Sunday. And of course, the open stream will be going throughout the entirety of all of that. All four streams as well, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, will be going on at the same time too. So there's a lot of watching to be going on over the next couple of days. I want to get you ready for Pool D though, which I think is going to be by far the most entertaining and some of the hottest competition when it comes to Friday specifically, as all four teams I really have doing very well, or could do very well, I guess you could say. We'll start with what the pools look like first. Here's what they are. If you missed looking at A, B, C, or obviously now you're looking at D, so don't worry about that. Make sure you go back to my channel and check those out. They're all about 15 minutes long. I break down all the teams, and especially the teams that have made roster adjustments and what I think, and kind of evaluating them on my opinion based off statistics and role swaps, stuff of that nature as they get ready to go for Fort Worth. This is the one pool that there have not been really any changes at all, with the exception of Reciprocity, who we will talk about when we get there. Let's start at the very top of this pool, though. eUnited, the first team up with the BZ, Clayster, Pristini, JCap, and Arcides. And I can't talk too much about this team without first going into all of that drama that happened during the roster mania period. Apparently, the four other members besides Clayster on eUnited voted that they wanted Clayster off the team. eUnited as an organization actually says, no, we're not going to allow that to happen. We want Clayster here. He's the face of our org. He will be staying here, so you guys are going to have to deal with it. And then a bunch of drama unfolded between Clayster and Pristini, and Clayster was saying he wanted to get rid of Pristini. There was a lot of just inner turmoil going on with this roster. Fact of the matter is, no swaps happened whatsoever. And as you take a look back at what they were able to do in their time of the 2 weeks of Division B, they played relatively well throughout. It's kind of hard to pick and point at things that weren't good for them. Obviously, that opening loss versus the Heretics, which was kind of a surprise to a lot of us. And then Heretics went on a tear through Division B in their first week. And we looked back at that and said, all right, you went to 5 with a very solid team in Heretics. Never mind, that's actually not so bad. But then you take a look at week number 2, and there's that 0-3 loss to Team Envy. And honestly, it wasn't the worst looking loss ever. They didn't play as well as they normally had in United, and Envy came out and played super well. So losing that matchup is not the worst case scenario for this squad. They finished second in Division B, but the biggest question mark I have about this team is their control. They're 2-5 overall with a very mediocre average of a 1.86 in their favor per map, and they give up 2.29 rounds per control map. That's something on average that I think needs to be a little bit better. The good news for this squad is that you have a very solid hardpoint. You're 8-4 there, and you hold the best record differential in hardpoint at plus 53 3/4 points per round. Pardon me, per map. And then their search and destroy, they're also 7-3 there. So eUnited can absolutely do some work. It just comes down for me, and why I had them rated only 4th in my power rankings, it comes down to the inner turmoil. If this team starts to get a little derailed and things start to go wrong in the middle of sets, they very well could collapse under it. Unless they came together, had a little kumbaya, and said, all right, let's get ourselves put back together. Forget about the roster drama. We've got a championship to go in. If they can go figure all that out and just have a level head, I think this team could do some wonderful things. But I honestly don't know if the maturity is going to be there, because we've seen it time and time again when things weren't, talked about when it comes to roster changes. Also still not going great for eUnited when it comes to those inner discussions that happen in the midst of a hot, heated set. And this is a very difficult pool. So I still have this team finishing in the top 2, just based on the fact that they are a good hardpoint and search team. I just need to see them get better at control, and this very well could be a for real team. And obviously, they need to get themselves kind of reined in as far as what's going on with this roster, because all of that drama is obviously not appreciated, I'm sure, for the organization, let alone the players. And then we'll skip over and we'll talk about OpTic. This is going to be a very quick video because there's not a lot to talk about as far as roster changes. OpTic is, I would say, my favorite to win this whole event. Yes, we haven't seen Dashy play on LAN since Vegas, but I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. For those of you that are out there that obviously I'm sure most of you either tune in regularly or have tuned in occasionally to watching OpTic scrim, they are very lighthearted lately, and they're very comfortable and confident, which has been really kind of lighthearted to see. Also, kind of keep in mind that they are at their own, obviously, OpTic LAN, pre-event LAN, which is going to help build them with all that sincerity that you want when it comes to this pool specifically. They're going to be able to work out some of their weak points and really make sure they're hammered in, ready to go. So I think this team absolutely finishes on top of this bracket. I think they're going to come up against a lot of obstacles with these teams that are in this pool, but still, I think that their resiliency and composure will win the day out. I think they're going to have good set plans for each of these teams in the pool, and I have them winning out completely. They still, even with, this is the kind of the more impressive thing, is you take a look at their individual mode win-loss ratios. They're 8-4 in hardpoint, 5-5 in search, and 3-4 in control. Their control is the only place where they have a slightly negative average when it comes to rounds for versus rounds against, but they were able to still hold nearly a plus 30 win average on their hardpoints, and going 8-4 is really impressive. I think Zuma definitely filled in a role pretty well. Obviously, those coordinated and positional things started to become a little bit more clear in the search and the control specifically, but you bring back Dashy, you're getting familiar with the pre-land. I think that this team will be just as dominant as before. My only thing about it is I have this team winning Fort Worth, but it's not going to be nearly as convincing throughout the entirety of both Friday and Saturday as it was at Vegas. I think there's a lot more competition that is closer to where OpTic has been in the past. It just comes down to, I still think that they're the better team out of just everybody else who's going to be there in the CWL. So I still have them winning and also winning this pool. We'll switch over and take a look at Team Envy, which has been a very big question mark squad, having, obviously gone through their second week, a very hot week 4 for them, having beat eUnited and Heretics at the very end. They had a very close set versus Enigma 6, and even the set versus 100 Thieves was relatively close too, even though it read as a 3-1. But you take a look at Team Envy in total, and it's just kind of hard to find the weak points. These guys go to Game 5 just about more than anybody else, and they typically don't end up winning those Game 5s. That's something that needed to change. We've heard opinions from just about every single player on the roster when it comes to their communication and coordination just seems to falter, and that was very much so the case when we saw them in their Game 5 sets. In fact, every game that went to Game 5, 3 of them in the CWL Pro League, all of them they lost. That was to Accelerate, Splice, and Enigma 6. So this is a team that really needs to figure themselves out as they get into the lengthier stages of these longer sets, because again, this is a very tough pool. You could definitely see a couple instances where, if Team Envy comes out and they play as a full functioning squad and they all play at a very high level, you very well could see this team surprising some squads here when it comes to, your eUnited, like they've already beaten at a 3-0 score, but also having a set versus OpTic could be very close. So if this team is fully functional, they come to play that day and everyone's playing hot, I think this team could make a run potentially at being a top 2 squad if they are able to surprise. But I think that with the lack of composure and consistency that we've seen from this team in the past, it would be hard to convince me that they are for sure a top 2 team. It would be, I would say, a surprise if they finish top 2. I still have them finishing in the 3rd spot overall, but I can see this pool kind of getting mixed up as far as who beats who, because we'll switch things over and we'll talk about Reciprocity. And this is, I will just say it off the bat, this is my dark horse team as far as being a team that is sitting near dead last when it comes down to their record. They're sitting technically based off the win-loss ratio. They're 7th in Division A. They have the same win-loss ratio as Denial, but their averages are pretty atrocious, and some of their wins have been, well, I would say lucky to get the 2 wins that they had in some instances. The biggest thing is I see this team showing the most growth. They have switched Dens to the substitute role, and Dylan, who was previously the sub, will be coming in. And this is a huge upgrade for them as we take a look back over at our Pro League team cards. Again, big shout outs to Lion Man for collaborating with me on these and letting me use his resources. If you want to, make sure you go over to his Twitter and give him a follow if you want to see more of these awesome graphics on his end. Dylan comes in and is immediately, by his PLQ stats, one of the best players on this team. And yes, when you talked about Dens, he is more of like a Maddox style player in the past that we've seen him, but was not going to be given the opportunity because you got Wuskin, you got Shawnee, and you've got Tommy that all run more of that AR style mid-range role. So he's going to have to play that SMG. It doesn't go so well. He doesn't really get acclimated with it. So now it's going to be Zed and Dylan up front, and this is a very good dual lane. The biggest thing for me is not necessarily the combination of that SMG, but if you can let Dylan play kind of how Priesta had been doing with 100 Thieves, and Tommy can just follow up, I think you just let Dylan go. You just take the reins off him, let him loose. Just go play the map as you see fit. Have the other 4 guys kind of adapt and move around his positioning and the kills that he finds. Tommy has been one of the biggest all-star fraggers so far, I would say, in Division A. Quietly, again, because they're 2-5, but he's put out some of the more all-star performances across the 2 weeks of CWL Pro League play. And having Dylan in the mix will definitely help out when it comes to finding more frags on the map. Okay, so as we go back to their team page, again, one of their biggest downfalls is their control. They're the worst team in the CWL when it comes to control, only finding a 1-6 record there, which is actually even with the win-loss ratio as Evil Geniuses, but they only average 1.43 rounds in their favor, and they typically lose 2.86 rounds against them, which is not good at all. It's essentially saying that they get 3-1 almost every time that they play, where Evil Geniuses is closer to like a 3-2 margin here and there. So when it comes down to Reciprocity, and you look at their 3-10 hardpoint as well, I think Dylan helps when it comes to the respawn mode dramatically. And that's why I think this team is one of my biggest dark horses to surprise, is because they're already a good search and destroy team. They were 7-3 in search and destroy, with Dens being in the roster when they went 2-5. Now you're adding in Dylan, who's got more upfront gun pressure and can win more of those face-up gunfights. The respawn's just going to get better from here. And I think that's one of the reasons why I have Reciprocity being my dark horse to make a surprise run here. By surprise run, I mean finishing probably, very well could be top 8. But I think it's going to have to be through the losers bracket. They might be able to sneak away a win here versus a team like Envy or maybe even eUnited. I don't see them being able to match up against that of OpTic, just because the upfront pressure from OpTic is too strong. And if eUnited is caught on a bad day, I think Reciprocity could beat them. But the Reciprocity versus Envy game should be very interesting because, again, Dylan, in the face of like an Apathy, if Apathy doesn't win those gunfights routinely and he starts to get triggered and tilted, you're looking at a 5-on-4 almost the entirety of the way through those respawns. And that's when Reciprocity can start to surprise some people. And I think that that's going to be a case with Dylan in the mix. If he can go out and frag, Tommy can follow up and play as aggressively as he was during the CWL first 2 weeks in Division A, this team could surprise some people. So this is actually my pick for a dark horse most improved team with this change. I know it seems like a marginal one because it wasn't even a full roster swap. It's just taking your sub and putting him on the main roster. But Dylan, I think, is absolutely an animal. I think I had him top 5 as far as possible free agents before the CWL started, right after PLQ, and them picking him up was an absolutely crucial pickup. So it just comes down to how much practice they have and if you'll be able to come into Friday and actually pull off any set piece strategies with this team. But again, as you take a look back at the pools, I think my top 2 here are going to be OpTic and eUnited, and then Envy and Reciprocity in the bottom. But again, I think Reciprocity is definitely a team that should be looked at as making a potential losers bracket run in that championship bracket on Saturday and potentially Sunday if they get that far. That's all I got for you guys. I've got another really great idea for a video that I was coming up with as I was making a Reddit post, and I'll be doing that video. I maybe do it. I might do it tonight before the weekend starts. But I don't know. We'll see. The video is going to kind of focus around franchising, as we just heard that the franchise spots will be costing $25 million for your bids. At least that's the opening bid price. And so I kind of came up with a list of teams that I think might be able to invest or be interested in investing, and I want to break that down for you guys in video form. I was making a big old Reddit post and was like, this would make a good video. So I'm going to be doing that. I hope to get it out. Probably I want to get this out before the games on Friday because we've already done enough setup for them. But again, that's kind of up to my own personal decision. If you like these kind of videos, I'll stop talking. I'll be doing recaps of every single day of Fort Worth. So make sure you hit that subscription button, ring the bell to get notifications when my videos do pop up live. And until the next one, hope you guys keep holding it down. Later, bye-bye.